announce and let's ask people to register
Poor
to come. Yeah, and the idea is that okay, whoever queues up will accept that they're poor. We even if they come in a fancy car, right? We'll have to accept that they're poor, and we'll just distribute. And then we'll see if there are some other people who are saying, okay, I have some debts or something like that. I was affected by some situation, let's say like a fire, something like that. Can you help us? So okay, we'll help them. And by the time the money runs out, that's it for the year. We'll wait for the next year again, right? So that's what the question means by short-term thinking. I think there's a lot that we can learn from the world of crowdfunding, right? So in the world of crowdfunding, the whole picture is actually different. It's the other way around, where there is an objective that's marketed to people, right? So it could be we want to build a mosque, we want to build a clinic, or we want to do something, right? So you actually propose a project, and then you ask people to fund for it, right? And then once it's funded, you provide progress updates. You will say, okay, this is the progress, we've started construction, now it's the launching, these are the people who are benefiting from it, etc., etc. So I'm not suggesting that the actual collection of zakat should be based on projects, but what I'm saying is national planning should be in such a way,
The
right?
same mindset.
The same mindset, right? So the idea is that you set a target, right? So you sit down and make a plan, announce it to the public that okay, if the public, we believe that in Maldives, based on the GDP calculations, this is how much zakat potential is, right? This is how much it should be, right? Right now we are collecting 100 million, but we believe it should be actually 400 or 500 million. And if the public gives us this 400 million, we believe that we can work towards reducing poverty by X percentage. So this is our project. Everyone, can you please contribute? Help us achieve this, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you raise half of that, and then you start giving progress updates, right? Okay, total poverty in Maldives is X number, and this is how much we managed to bring down, and these are the progress updates and so on. So it's a very simple message, but once you start communicating it, similar to the communication that's done in the crowdfunding world, then I think the message will break through. You can see this because in the crowdfunding world, people contribute huge amounts of money. People are able to raise millions of dollars in the crowdfunding world because there's that transparency, there's that focus on specific KPIs or specific outcomes that we are trying to achieve, and you rally people around that. And people contribute, right? I mean, we can see that even in Maldivian society, when there's somebody who has a huge medical expense and there's a crowdfunding campaign going on, people sometimes are able to complete the target in a matter of days or weeks, right? So we can see that generosity. Maldivian community has ample generosity, and this is demonstrated over and over and over. I sometimes even get questions from people who ask me, okay, how much do I have to actually pay zakat? So I look at their situation and I tell them, I think this is roughly how much you have to pay. And they end up telling me later that they actually paid extra, right? So that level of generosity is there in the Maldivian community. And this is not by exception, right? I actually look at this as the general rule. I see it very often happening. So I think it's not the generosity that's the problem, it's communication, and it's actually just being transparent. What are we trying to achieve by distributing the funds? So once people start sensing that kind of long-term thinking, setting some objectives, and then communicating against it, I think that's the reason why zakat contribution has been increasing over the past few years.
Yeah, I think it would also contribute to more people trust in the institution, like Professor Faisal mentioned in his keynote speech. It will make more people willing to give or pay zakat. I think if they realize that their zakat funds are being used in a more impactful way. And my second question is also related to the social impact, specifically about poverty alleviation. What models, in your expertise or your experience, have you noticed that has worked successfully in Maldives or any other country that has integrated zakat or played a part, zakat has played a part in alleviating poverty specifically? Like, for example, the project Dr. Muniza mentioned might not contribute to poverty alleviation per se, but perhaps there are other examples that can contribute. They have successfully contributed to poverty alleviation. Can you think of anything? Yeah, that's fine.
So can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, so the model, successful models,
Yeah.
right? I think I will start with the Malaysia Madani model, which was actually launched with the current Prime Minister, the PMX, and which actually includes Maqasid Sharia, sustainability, and holistic and economic integration. And I think integration and integrated economic model, where all the sectors are integrated, and even all the various stakeholders are integrated, and towards a common vision, which is Madani vision, which is basically to achieve Maqasid Sharia across all sectors, across the community, and also to achieve sustainability. So this is briefly one model. The other model is which is actually something similar to this one, which is like the 4R model, which is also an integrative model, an integrative social finance model, where there is a focus on economic recovery, then also economic rescue. So we have a model to rescue those who need to be rescued, because we cannot have inclusive growth if we have certain sectors of our economy left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to rescue those who are falling behind. We need to handhold them as we progress. And then there is economic recovery. So sometimes people who are not left behind, but the people might go into trouble. So we need to rescue them using this integrated social finance, a lot of things which has been discussed, various tools. And then the economic reinforcement. Sometimes people may have certain avenues, certain sources of income, but they just need a little bit of support to actually go to the next level.
Uh-huh.
So that's the economic reinforcement. And then economic resilience. So even after you have built certain businesses, certain progress, you need to sustain it. You need to be able to withstand any sort of economic impact or shocks. So there should be some mechanisms to build that resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So I just would basically stop here with these two models, which has been practiced successfully in number of countries, which has, like even Malaysia, the Madani model is actually developing very fast. It's getting a lot of support, a lot of traction among the academicians as well as practitioners. And then the 4R model.
Yeah. I think our Zakat House also can benefit from it. But let's move on to the next question, because the time is short, unfortunately. The next question is about using Zakat for employment creation and SME development. In what ways has Zakat contributed to employment generation and SME development? I think this is also a way we can increase the impact of Zakat. If we can contribute, if we can use Zakat to contribute to employment generation. I think we have addressed some of these issues or this topic in previous sessions in terms of projects and likewise.
Let me start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think social finance models with when we integrate this, I think the best way to actually create employment impact is to actually integrate the social finance models like Zakat, Waqf, all this to the key economic sectors. Like for example, in Maldives, what are the key economic activities that are essential to our economy? Which is like, for example, transport. So we need to integrate our social finance, zakat, waqf, everything into transport. Right now we have this RTL in some metals, in the I think south, some metals, and also in the north, 3 or 4 atolls already have this RTL. So this RTL is actually, it's like a social finance solution. But I think we haven't integrated the zakat and waqf into this RTL, the ferry system. So basically we can, for example, the asset part, which is the vehicle, can be funded by waqf. So waqf, and then the operation may be funded by, say, for example, zakat, and we can actually have different categories of users. We can give for the asnaf, for the zakat recipients, those who are in the list of poor and needy, we can give them card for using this at a maybe free or at a very discounted price. But others will be paid at a normal rate. So we are actually, by this kind of economic sectors, when we support, we are creating employment opportunities. And this is just one example. So we need to integrate all these social finance models into our key economic activities. Transport is one, and then maybe there are others like fishing, and then tourism. So we need to integrate this within the key sectors of the economy to create employment. Because without integrating our social finance solutions to key economic activities, employment opportunities will not be created.
I think I can supplement a little bit. So obviously, in order to have a successful level of employment in an economy, you need the youth to have two things. You need them to have good education and good health. And I think this is where the intervention from Zakat fund comes at a really useful level. So Zakat fund in Maldives is known to have contributed to healthcare throughout, in the past, and there have been significant contributions in that area. We have actually seen some testimonies from people, and these are people who are already employed, who are already working, and suddenly they find themselves in a serious medical situation. One of the brothers who was with us at the conference last year, I found out that he was, met with a significant health issue, and immediately, although he was employed and he was earning, immediately he fell into the gharimin category, right? Indebted, because it's more than $500,000 rupiah of expenditure. And he was aware, because he was participating in these conferences, he was aware that there is a way that even though he was not a poor person, there was a way for him to seek assistance. And alhamdulillah, he got the assistance and successfully made the surgery, right? So that ensured that he's able now to continue his employment, right? So health and education, I think, are the two main drivers that ensures employment is kept at unemployment is prevented, essentially.
I'd also like to add something for that. Now, when it comes to employment, I think we can take the example of the Black Swan event, the pandemic. During pandemic, overnight, a lot of people lost their job. And they didn't know where to find a job, because obviously people cannot go to a normal conventional workplace. So in one of the banks I work in Malaysia, CIMB, we came up with the CIMB Rider program, whereby we used social finance sources in order to employ asnafs who are previously doing maybe a 9-to-5 job but now unemployed. What we did was we bought some motorcycles and connected them to how do I explain, like Food Panda. You know,
delivery app.
Delivery app. So what they did was the delivery app provided some training to these asnafs, and they were given proper capacity building and training so that they won't quit after they are given the motorcycles, or run away with the motorcycles, or never go and do any kind of job, right? So after giving all this education, they were given the motorcycle as a waqf, a temporary waqf, and then they are supposed to be a Food Panda rider for a certain period, maybe 1 year. And if they have done it successfully, they are able to own the motorcycle and do their own work and uplift or empower themselves on their own. So these types of programs actually focus on empowering asnafs, and we can use source of fundings that are coming from either zakat or waqf or so on and so forth, and it has the potential of alleviating poverty as well. So likewise, we always say that blended financing has its own unique purposes. Let's imagine a situation that is commercial takaful, but we have, during pandemic, we understood that a lot of people who didn't have medical insurance were unable to afford any type of takaful, and they were unable to even go to hospitals because they don't have money. So in order to elevate them from that situation, using zakat, we can provide the contribution that needs to be paid for takaful for these asnafs, and as a condition we can ask them to even work in some of the factories or do some productive work that will generate some kind of a return to them. I think there are a lot of models of blended financing that were successfully implemented during the pandemic, and that shows the potential of zakat and other types of social financing modes. But I think what I want to highlight is that nowadays it's a trend that if we want to make people more productive, we do give them Qarl Hasan, and one of the source of funding for Qarl Hasan is again zakat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's say we have done some projects, or so we have done started some projects to increase the impact of social impact of zakat. Like we usually start with a pilot project, right? So one of the main reasons of doing a pilot project is to first of all measure the impact, or whether it has the desired outcome, right? So when we contribute, when we use zakat contribution for all these projects and all this to increase the social impact of zakat, we have to measure in a quantifiable manner the impact of zakat. So what can, or how can we actually measure whether the funds of zakat are being used to, in a good way, or in a way that increases its social impact?
I think to answer short, definitely not based on the number of disbursements made or the amount dispersed. I mean, we shouldn't set our KPI on the collection, neither on the disbursement alone. So I think we have to come up with a formula that is customized to us to measure the return on investment, because we are measuring the social return, right? But at the same time, we have to be a little bit practical as well. If you are just giving money for consumption, let's say 5,000 per year, what's the point of measurement, people might ask. But what I believe is that even if we give a lump sum for consumption, it is our duty to measure, or at least it should be something which is data driven, in the sense that we should be able to gather enough data to understand how they are spending this money. If they are spending this money on certain prohibited categories, then we should be able to stop that and divert it to a more productive way of usage. For example, in some of the zakat institutions in the world, they don't give cash to hand of asnaf, rather they give a card, or they designate a certain shop where they can buy the necessary goods. And that way at least we have the data on how they are using this money, and that data can be used to come up with more enhanced targeted programs to uplift the asnaf. So I think in the context of Maldives, we have to first come up with the proper programs before we talk about how to measure it. Thank you.
You have to monitor how they are.
Yes.
How they're spending,
In
right?
fact, one of our PhD students, right, is focusing on this area. And the same thing came to our mind as supervisors. Dr. Nizam is the main supervisor, I'm the co-supervisor. The first thing that comes to our mind is, if the money is given for consumption, then what is there to measure, in the sense that, let's say we want to measure whether maqasid al-sharia is achieved by giving zakat. So it's difficult.
Or whether he's
Yeah.
buying cigarettes with the money. Maybe.
But I think what maybe we can start building the framework, the scorecard, Maqasid Sharia scorecard, to measure the impact. Because we have some projects already, so what we can do, we develop a simple scorecard for now with very minimum key impact measurement indicators, and then do a preliminary assessment first to see what is the current status, and then based on that we can either improve the scorecard or we can come up with the new programs, and then we can keep measuring it every time based on that scorecard. And this is what actually our student is currently working on, building that as kind of a scorecard. Hopefully when the student graduates and finishes his work, we will have some sort of something that you can adopt. Right?
He's a Malaysian.
No, he's a Maldivian, but
Maldivian,
he's studying in INZAC.
I think, I mean, this idea of impact measurement is actually a very challenging topic, right? It's easy to talk about it and theorize about it, but as a practitioner, we have been trying to come up with impact reporting in our banking activities for several years, and we haven't found the right balance, okay? Because if you start measuring too much, you're invading people's privacy, all right?
Yeah,
So you have
that's
to be
true.
careful about that. You have to be careful about not harassing people with too much data gathering, so much so that they feel like they are lab rat, right? That you're just attaching so much sensors on all of on
Tell
them.
us
So
everything
yes.
you're buying with the money.
Exactly. So there's that balance of giving a person some dignity and some agency and some respect, right? But at the same time, you want to be able to confidently tell the stakeholders that you are deploying the funds in an appropriate manner and that you're making some progress, that you're making an impact, that you're achieving your objectives, right? So it's definitely a difficult thing, but it needs to be done. So there are different economic models that could be used as a proxies, right? So for example, it's well known in economics that people who are in abject poverty, when you give them cash payments, if you give it to the mother in the household, usually the spending is more towards necessities compared to if you give it to the father, for example, right? And obviously this depends on cultural circumstances and so on, right? So in non-Muslim circumstances, sometimes it's shown that the likelihood of spending the funds on cigarettes or on alcohol and things like that significantly reduces if you give it to the mother compared to if you give it to the father. So these are some things that can be that can be kept in mind, but it's depending on different cultural sensitivities and so on, right? But so it's difficult, but it needs to be done. All right, but
in some way or at some level.
exactly. So what can be done without invading people's privacies is looking at the macro. So macro can be measured. So if you want to look at reducing poverty at a national level, right? So has poverty been reducing nationally on average, right? Or for example, mortality, if you want to measure mortality. If you want to measure specific illnesses, diseases, right? So for example, lung cancer, if you want to measure that. So at a macro level, it's measurable, and that's something that can be done fairly easily. But the micro impact on the exact recipients, that's where things have been very challenging.
Okay, let's move on to the last one. We are short on time. I would like to request you to briefly mention any success stories from the Maldives or other Muslim majority countries that illustrate Zakat's role in driving inclusive growth. Any success stories where Zakat has contributed to driving inclusive growth?
I think we don't have to talk much about that because Zakat Kedah is
One of the
is
best
the case study
examples,
that we have spoken a lot about that, how they have been. I think we have had a number of discussion on how they have, whether Dr. Faisal's presentation on what Zakat Kedah has actually achieved and done in that that aspect is a very good benchmark, I think, as a case study. That's what I want to say. But maybe, Prof.
I think in the Maldivian context, Zakat Nafa is a program that has potential. I mean, from the past experience, obviously, we can take the right steps and correct it. Thank you.
So, Zakat Nafa, so we can improve on it because
Of
we
course.
have.
Because we have to learn from our experiences and improve it, but that doesn't mean that just because it didn't work at that particular period of time, the program is bad. It's just that we have to come up with the right approach.
Right approach, yeah. That would be the end of the questions for the panelists on my side, and I would like to open the floor for the question. Any question from the audience? Hopefully.
Yeah. Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. From the overall discussions, I gathered I don't want to name names, but I will share a story, a small story. There's a family here, one of my friends' family here. They are not actually from Mali, but they're just on the borderline. He's a driver, and he has a wife and 2 kids, I think. Recently, he shared that he just got sick for taxi driver, got sick for 10 days in the month. He don't have any other income source. He just survives on the whatever he earns from the taxi riding. And due to this 10 days sick leave, he fell short on his cycle payments, rent, and they had to ask for help. And the family reached out to me, and if there is any organization that is providing such help. So I reached out to of course I tried to help them in the best way I can, but they didn't get enough so that they can make the ends meet to the month. Since we are talking about the inclusive strategies here, I asked one of the Thakaful company friends that I have, do they have a program like these kind of gig income category people where they can secure through an insurance package? I think in Malaysia they have this where drivers can have a small insurance package that they can secure against their monthly income. I mean, when we talked about inclusive growth, Dr. Muniza also said our KPI should not be linked to how much collection that we are making, how much payment that we are giving. We also have to see to it that not many people are fall into the zakat category. I mean, those who are having a job, we need to, the inclusive strategy should be that they can maintain in those jobs, and when they fall short, there should be other mechanisms that it can cover for it. I hope I...
Yeah. So if we look at the Malaysian context, of course, My Salam, the government scheme for B40 will cover the takaful coverage for anybody who can't afford a premium package, right? But unfortunately, in our context, I think we haven't come up with the proper packages like that for medical purposes yet. But recently in the newspaper, I saw one of the articles where it is said that the ministry is, or Zakat House is trying to work with one of the insurance companies to come up with some takaful packages using Zakat. Am I right, Director General? So I guess the future is bright.
If I can just add, I think the question is actually unemployment insurance rather than health insurance. There are ways of thinking about it. You see, different kinds of social security, not all social security can be catered to through Zakat, right? But the idea of establishing social security for gig economy is a topic that we have to address, right? Because going forward, gig economy is going to be a more common form of employment, right? One way that in Malaysia, the Malaysian government has tried to address it is, first of all, to encourage gig economy workers to start contributing to their pension fund, right? Because typically they don't, and they're not required. There's no employer that will contribute. Secondly, there is basically the pension fund accounts are segregated into 3 accounts, and you can actually withdraw for emergencies from your 3rd account, right? So for any reason, you don't need to have any justification. There's account 1, 2, and 3. Account 3 you can withdraw for any emergencies. Account 2 you can withdraw for education purposes, for first-time house purchase and so on. But account 3 for any emergency you can withdraw, right? So that could be one mechanism of ensuring that social safety net. An unemployment insurance like that, from a commercial takaful provider, I don't think it's going to be, from an actuarial science, I don't think it's going to be feasible. But it's possible that it may come through a state-sponsored unemployment insurance, which also I think does exist in Malaysia. Perkeso does provide unemployment insurance. So that might be possible. But from a private company, I don't think it'll add up. Thank you.
If I may explain further, my idea was not to pay this from a zakat payment, but see, these families, they are just on the border that even if 10 days or 5 days they fall sick, their income suddenly drops and they cannot make their ends meet. So if we are having an inclusive program, for example, such people's social insurance scheme or unemployment scheme can be funded through a wakaf or other type of financing schemes, so that we have an inclusive system, so that to ensure that the people who are employed, they don't fall to the zakat system.
That's correct.
Yeah. That's what my...
Is there any more questions? Yeah, there's one. We'll take this last question. Yeah.
Before I go to my question, actually, I want to highlight that in the Maldivian market, we have insurance product, takaful product for which is called accident cover. So in that, there is a portion like a person is sick for certain period, the salary will be covered, and through the banks, takaful companies are offering this product in the market.
All right. Okay, that's great.
Okay, and my question is to Dr. Moniza. During today's discussion, we have had several discussions on each institutions. They are working in silos and there is no collaboration. So I want to ask, what are the policy changes that Maldives should bring in order to have an integrated collaborative framework to develop Islamic finance?
Thank you very much, Walida, for the information and for the question as well. I think INZAC students are very active, right? It's not an easy question to answer, but I think what we need is to have a proper, I think we discussed this today, we need to have a strategic action plan to see where we want to be in the upcoming years, maybe next 5 years, where we want to be. And in order to determine that, we should have a proper stakeholder consultation process. We need to bring everybody into one place and talk about what actually we can do by collaborating with each other and come up with a proper vision and then the plan to execute it. It's easy to say that, but actually we have to go through this cumbersome, long, difficult process by bringing everyone to the same table. And starting from there, inshallah, we will know where to go. Because right now, if we look at, for example, our central bank, they have recently initiated the Islamic Social Finance Initiative, and the Islamic banks are supposed to come up with a proper plan on how they want to implement the initiative by coming up with some selected pilot projects. But if we look at Securities Market Regulatory Authority, they might not have a similar strategy, and they might not have a similar vision as well. And if we look at Ministry of Islamic Affairs, we do have social financial institutions, but if we really want to have a holistic system in Maldives for Islamic social finance, it's quite easy. Maldives Zakat House and the banks could work together. One of the sources of funding could be coming from Maldives Zakat House, and the banks could implement it by reaching out to those who actually cannot be reached by Zakat House alone. Now, housing is one of the examples. We always talk about affordable housing. But if we look at the reasons why people cannot afford housing, mainly it's because of the collateral requirement or the equity requirement. So what if the Maldives Zakat House provides the equity required for social housing and alleviate the burden on a person who needs housing? And then the banks would do the rest, and it could be a social housing scheme that could be monitored by the banks, because at the end of the day, if Zakat House tries to do it, how can they do the recovery? Or in a default situation, they might not have the best system or the mechanism available. So I think collaboration is the answer, and in order to collaborate, we need to talk to each other. Communication is really important, and therefore somebody needs to take lead and bring all stakeholders to one room, discuss about the future, come up with the plan. Inshallah, then we can see the future. Thank you.
Doesn't look like a small feat.
She'll do it.
Yeah. With that, we will conclude our panel discussion. Thank you all the panelists for your contribution. Thank you the audience for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.